Wasabi wallet. Unfairly private.
What's up, everyone? Ben with the BTC Sessions here, and this is your daily session.
Hodl that Bitcoin.
Before we dive in, of course, shout out to sponsors of the show, Ledn.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin for a few different services, one of which is a Bitcoin savings account where you can earn Bitcoin on your Bitcoin paid out in Bitcoin. Another is Bitcoin-backed loans. This is where you can use your Bitcoin as collateral to secure a US or Canadian dollar loan. So I find this one particularly useful if you need to get your hands on dollars, but you are worried about selling your Bitcoin, you think it might be a bad time, that the price might go up. This could be a great option for you. And finally, if you're a huge Bitcoin bull and you want to get additional exposure, you can check out the B2X option. And this is where you can actually get double the exposure to the price of Bitcoin. If you opt to get a Bitcoin-backed loan by clicking the link down below, they'll actually also credit your account with an additional $50 worth of Bitcoin. So check out that link in the show notes down below. And secondly, if you're into Bitcoin, then privacy is important. And one of the things I use for that is NordVPN. It's on my computer, it's on my phone. And basically what it does is it hides your IP address, it encrypts your browsing data, and it has a ton of other added benefits. One of my favorites being unlocking geoblock content. So if you can't access something in your region, you can simply change your region with Nord, and then boom, that content is unlocked. So if you want to check them out, there's a link down below where you can get 70% off. That equates to about $3.49 a month. So pretty damn cheap. So check that out. And let's get into the news now. So it's been a bit of a wild ride for Bitcoin price recently, and obviously this is nothing new. So at the end of last week, there's a lot of FUD around China potentially banning Bitcoin. So that sent us kind of into a downward spiral. It had previously catapulted us upwards when the president of China came out being super pro blockchain, and everybody just kind of grouped Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in with that. And it since has come out that they're not super keen on Bitcoin. Surprise, surprise, that an authoritarian government doesn't like a freeing open protocol that allows people to transact peer-to-peer. Ooh, who would have thought? Anyways, when they came out and said that we're not huge fans of this, it was obviously not favorable to the price. A lot of people freaked out. But we now have to take a look and see how real is that. And while there does appear to be some negative sentiment, there has been some pushback from BitHum and Binance saying like, hey, we don't even have offices in China to raid. So I don't know what there was fake news about their offices being raided. And furthermore, realistically, how much of a long-term effect on price would this be if it were enforceable? And I like the way that Beauty on Twitter summed it up here. He said, when the entire world settles on Bitcoin, who will care about China? No one in the West cares about all their cargo cult, carbon copy, social media services, and Bitcoin can't care. This is a clear signal to the nation states of the West, do the opposite of what China does and win. And so when he talks about their carbon copy, social media services, China, you're not allowed to use Facebook. There's a lot of social media options that have just been cut off because the free speech tends to be negative towards the Chinese government, or it allows people to say negative things and they can't easily take those down, so they just block the entirety of that social network, instead opting to create things or allow things to run where they can have a stranglehold on even specific phrases just being banned. So we see like WeChat and Alipay being some of the major ones that get used in China, but with that comes a totalitarian government looking over your shoulder, making sure you're not doing anything against the Central Party of China. So, I mean, that's one thing to think about. And also, if they are successful in banning all Bitcoin exchanges within the country, that pushes. So, first of all, you can't effectively ban Bitcoin itself. People can still easily transact peer to peer. We have satellite networks up now that people can connect to. You can do mesh networks, just as long as there's a singular entrance point to the internet somewhere, you can relay transactions very easily. So, what does that do? A banning of all crypto exchanges? Well, it just pushes it more peer-to-peer. You rely on coffee shop meetings instead of going and wiring money to your local exchange. And how do you regulate that? How do you keep tabs on billions of people and say, no, you individuals can't meet up? It's just not going to happen, and it's just going to be further and further out of the control of the Chinese government. So, yeah. And further to that news, there was some FUD around miners capitulating because of the drop in price with all the FUD from China, and that miners were going to start dropping out and there'd be another death spiral. And every once in a while, this narrative comes up where people say it's not going to be profitable for miners. They're going to drop out and we're going to see the hash rate crash and the network will become easier to attack. That doesn't seem to be happening. Now, we did see a dip in hash rate over the past month or so, but it actually seems to be on the uptick now. And part of that, I think, can be because of sunk costs. So when you buy all of your mining hardware, that's already a sunk cost. You've already paid for that. Furthermore, a lot of these miners, their energy, their electric is a sunk cost as is. So you pay for your electricity in advance, many cases. Furthermore, even other miners, they're relying on renewables, things like hydro dams in rural China or other places in the world. Here in my home province of Alberta, there's starting to be mining that is done on remote natural gas wells that cannot be cost effectively shipped to the grid. And so that energy can be captured, funneled into Bitcoin miners. By funneling it into Bitcoin miners instead of flaring it, you're offsetting your carbon taxes and you're getting a return from the Bitcoin. So these guys can operate at near zero return on Bitcoin and still be fine. We're not seeing that. So while we did have a dip, we actually just hit a new all-time high for hash rate of 134 quintillion hashes per second, which is crazy. The last time we were up there was October 10th. And it looks like... So we did have a 7% drop in hash rate previously over the last month, but we now have a 2% uptick, and it looks like we might have another 5% uptick at the next difficulty adjustment. Those happen roughly every 2 weeks. So by and large, it looks like the FUD around miner capitulation seems to be false, and we'll see what happens with the upcoming halving where the supply gets cut this coming May, but price-wise, historically speaking, we've seen a little bit of FOMO just prior to the halving in recent years, and following the halving, not immediately, but I'm talking longer term, like year to 18 months out, we see massive price appreciation after that supply cut. Now, obviously, historically speaking, you can't say that history is an indication of future performance, but so far, history seems to have rhymed. So I guess we'll see. I'm pretty bullish on what's going to happen post-halving, but anybody's guess. And then I wanted to highlight also in relation to this drop in price compared to alts. So last time that Bitcoin dipped, so we did dip considerably the last little bit. We did get down into the mid 6,000, so like 6,600 or so. And the last time Bitcoin hit that price was back on May 11th of this year. But I wanted to put that into the context of where altcoins were at that time. Well, Ethereum at that time was 176, whereas now 136. XRP was 30 cents, now it's 21 cents. BCH was $2.99, now it's $1.99. LTC was $79, now it's $44. EOS was $4.94, now it's $2.41. And I said that this is a pretty great way to lose sats. And somebody pointed out, well, why don't you price it in sats then? So I did. ETH was 2.6 million sats, now it's 2. XRP was 44.65, now it's 31.61. BCH was 4.6 million, now it's 2.9 million. LTC was 1.1 million, now it's 665K. EOS was 73K, now it's 35K. So again, if you were banking on altcoins to get more sats, you're losing not only your dollars, but you're losing your sats. So if the name of the game for you is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, altcoins, at least all through the bear market, are not your answer. Let's move on. So there's a new version of Bitcoin Core released, and this is Bitcoin Core is the most widely used implementation of the Bitcoin software. So there's a few important updates that I wanted to refer to here. So one is that BEC32 addresses are now default. These were already available in Bitcoin before in Bitcoin Core, but now it's the default address for everybody to use with the option to switch to wrapped SegWit. So if you're unfamiliar with how Bitcoin addresses work, there are typically three types that you'll see, some of which start with a 1, some start with a 3, and some start with a BC1. So depending on what your address starts, you can infer which address or which type of address you're using. So a 1 address is a legacy address, the first type of address that was used in Bitcoin. The 3 address is known as a wrapped Bitcoin address. So it is slightly smaller in data size to convey a transaction when using a wrapped or a 3 address Bitcoin wallet. And a BEC32 is the smallest size of the data that you could be transferring to create a transaction. It's important to note that BEC32 can send to any other type of Bitcoin address. A wrapped SegWit or a 3 address can again send to any type of a Bitcoin address. A 1 address can only send to other 1 addresses or 3 addresses. It cannot understand a BEC32 or like a BC1 address. It doesn't recognize it. So those are the oldest type. Old wallets will use those, or wallets by companies that refuse to upgrade because they're just not keeping up and don't care about their customers. Those things will not function if you see a big BC1 address. So just know that if you're looking at your wallet on your phone or on your computer and you're seeing 1 addresses, it might be time to switch away from that particular wallet and get one that's a little bit more updated with the times. Ideally something with BEC32, but just a wrapped SegWit address is fine too. So take a peek around, see what options are out there. I like Blockstream Green, I like Samurai, I like Wasabi for desktop. Electrum is good. There's another one called HODL Wallet. So there are options out there that stay privy to the current trends in Bitcoin. Okay, so this is 2-block only outbound connections extra by default. So basically what this is there's an attack vector in the Bitcoin network where, technically speaking, somebody could try and segregate Bitcoin nodes that are hosting copies of the Bitcoin blockchain and try and cut them off from the rest of the network and feed them an incorrect state of the ledger. Basically lie about what transactions are new and omit some, and basically have people not following the correct chain. This just adds some connections to nodes by default without putting too much pressure on how much capacity, how much data needs to be relayed to prevent those types of attacks. So it's just some extra connections by default when it comes to your Bitcoin node. Bloom filters. So Bloom filters are used to help light wallets. So like a wallet on your phone, connect to nodes and check on addresses and balances just directly related to your particular wallet. Now, Bitcoin Core, the newest version, no longer supports Bloom filters. And the reason for that is that it has some kind of unfriendly privacy trade-offs with it. Now, Bloom filters will still work because not everybody immediately upgrades to the newest version of Bitcoin Core. In fact, some people are running very, very old versions of Bitcoin Core, and they still work because that's kind of been the ethos of Bitcoin, that it should always be backwards compatible. You don't want to. You don't want people that are running old nodes to suddenly be forked off the network and be out of consensus. And so Bloom filters will work for probably years and years to come. But what this will do is either one, we'll have to come up with some sort of a workaround that allows these light SPV clients, these mobile wallets, to function easily still, or it pushes people towards running their own nodes. Hopefully a little bit of both is what I'm hoping. But I guess we'll see moving forward. But as of right now, this by and large won't affect most people on the network that are running a light wallet on their phone. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was payment protocol support disabled. So what this is if you've ever recently in the past, I think a year or two, gone to a merchant online that was using BitPay and you tried to pay with Bitcoin, you probably found it was a massive pain in the ass, and the QR codes they provided just don't work with regular Bitcoin wallets. Well, they are using something called BIP70, which again has some major privacy trade-offs, and also just people don't use it. It's not great. It never was. And Bitcoin Core was gonna phase it out until BitPay adopted it and started using it so widely, and so that kind of delayed things. Well, turns out everybody hates this and nobody wants to use it other than apparently BitPay. And so finally the developers were like, no, we're gonna get rid of support for this. It's not worth maintaining. There's no point. And so that is now gone. So I guess we'll see how BitPay reacts to this if they get rid of BIP70. But if you want to still use BIP70 and you also want to upgrade Bitcoin, you have to run some special configurations of Bitcoin Core in order to do it. So you got to compile it all yourself. It's a process. So yeah. Best of luck, BitPay. Anyways, that's kind of the wrap up of what's new in Bitcoin Core. I find it kind of interesting what they did. Okay, not your keys. 92% of institutional investors keep crypto on exchanges. Holy God. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, but that is a bad early precedent to set. Okay, so a couple things. So the most popular choice for institutional investors, this is a survey from Binance, but basically most institutional investors are just literally leaving it with the exchange that they bought it on, which is, guys, okay, a little bit I get it, because the institutionals probably have no idea what they're doing in the first place, but let's hope that gets better. Yeah, so basically after that 92%, the next best choice for them was to get it into like a hardware wallet, which is good. And then the last option was like the least popular was a third-party custody service. I mean, I feel like this is going to be almost like a Trojan horse that ends up collapsing institutions with terrible practices that like to rehypothecate. But oh God, I just don't. People are so used to the idea that they'll just get bailed out no matter what stupid thing that they do. And that's been the precedent, right? Banks made a bunch of bad calls, rehypothecated and fractional reserved out the ass. And when shit hit the fan, the Fed was like, "Oh, you guys made some bad choices, but here's billions and billions of dollars." This can't happen with Bitcoin. So let's say something happens where, and I should clarify here that most of these investors here, these institutional ones in this case, really didn't have much money sitting there in the first place. So at least that's better, but it sets a precedent moving forward for when there's a lot of capital allocated to something like this. That just is not good. So anyways, what happens when a large institution has a a large position in their portfolio of something like Bitcoin sitting on an exchange that gets hacked. And in the process, while that Bitcoin disappears, there's a major price appreciation of Bitcoin. And so what happens in that instance? Well, they're either going to have to pay out their clients in dollars, or they're going to have to repurchase the Bitcoin at a higher price, or they just go belly up. So I don't know what it's not good. So regardless, if you're looking at this going, that scares me, it should. And if you're early enough to be watching this now, it's best to hold your own keys. It's best to hold your own Bitcoin unless there's a purpose for you having it on an exchange. If you're an active trader or you're trying to get some sort of a service, keep it in your own custody, get a hardware wallet, and just start to learn proper security for yourself, because it is the most secure way to hold your Bitcoin. And if you do have Bitcoin with a custodian, try to minimize that exposure and only do what's necessary, because if all of your Bitcoin is sitting in one custodial basket, well, if shit hits the fan, then you get wiped out. So just be careful out there. Okay, I wanted to touch on this. Fold app is out of beta. So Fold app is an application. You can use it on your desktop, but they have a mobile app now. And so it's iOS and Android. It's out of beta. It used to be closed beta and you had to get an invite to do it. Well, now it's available. So it allows you to buy gift cards well, you could buy it with Bitcoin, but what interests me is buying it with my credit card. So I use it to buy Starbucks cards, and you get sats back. So I've been using it. So it doesn't look as pretty on desktop, but here's a little idea of what it looks like. So you have lots of options here. There's Airbnb, Amazon, AMC, Burger King, Chipotle, Delta Airlines, Gap, Home Depot, Hotels.com, Macy's, PF Chang's, I don't know what that is. So those airlines, Starbucks, Target, TJ Maxx, and Uber, and they're adding all the time. And so when you buy with dollars, you get a certain percent back in sats. So I can see right here, I've got a balance of 345,000 Satoshis that I've gotten from kickbacks just from buying gift cards. And I just use this for Starbucks. I think it's great. I've been waiting for something like this. Fold has been around for a long time. I was using it back in 2014, but I was using it as a novelty to spend my Bitcoin, which looking back now, I got multiple lattes that were like hundreds of dollars each by today's prices. So I very much prefer to use my dollars and get rewarded in Bitcoin and hold on to that. So right now, you cannot withdraw your Satoshi balance, but that is going to be implemented soon. But your Satoshis do retain their value. You can use this also to pay for these cards as well. So you'll get kickbacks. You could use the Satoshis to spend. And of course, if they're sitting there as sats and the price of Bitcoin goes up, well, you can afford more dollars worth of whatever gift card you want. So be sure to check it out. Also, there's a link. I don't know where here it is. Yeah, so you can invite friends and actually get 20,000 sats for every time. So I've started sharing. I'll share my link down below. If you decide to use it, great. But if you don't, no sweat. Either way, if you sign up using that link, you'll get 20,000 sats, and so will I. So, yeah, anyways, I like Fold. Do be cautious. One thing, if you're in Canada, not all of these are usable in Canada. So I only regularly use Starbucks because I know that it's usable, but I know for sure that Amazon.com is not transferable to the Canadian store. So they do have a place on their website on foldapp.com where you can actually check which cards are international, or you can just go on the individual websites of Airbnb or AMC and just check about usability of these gift cards outside of the United States if you are. And the last thing I want to touch on, I was super excited about this. Stephan Livera had me on his podcast the other day, and it just dropped today. So if you get the chance, go check that out. If you're unfamiliar with Stephan, I think he's got basically one of the best podcasts in the entire space. He's very, very intelligent. He's got a good grounding in Austrian economics in relation to Bitcoin. He has amazing guests, and I feel honored to be among his guests now. So we talked about education, getting newcomers into the space, how to explain certain things, and how you might have to go in from different angles depending on what brought somebody to Bitcoin. We also get talking about things like wallets and nodes and what's user-friendly and what's not, or what takes more learning, and going after like an incremental approach and getting those little wins instead of going all at once of run a node, hardware, all of this like right away out the gate, and instead turning somebody off, trying to get those incremental like, hey, learn how to back up your seed. Just little things so you don't overwhelm people. Anyways, I'd love for you guys to take a listen. Let me know what you thought. I'm always also looking to learn and improve on how I explain things to people. So let me know what you thought, and let Stephan know as well, because it's always great to have feedback. So I'm going to wrap it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, do hit like, subscribe, and share. Especially hit share. It is wonderful to get new people watching these videos. If you want to help out the show in another way, you can hit up the sponsors down below. That is Ledn and Nord. Also, while you're at it, check out Wasabi Wallet. It is excellent for privacy. So if you want to mix your coins and try and break those links between yourself and your funds, that's a good thing to do as a general practice, because you never know what kind of prying eyes are trying to check out how much Bitcoin you have, and that could be a security issue. And finally, if you really like what you saw, you can hit me up with a Lightning Network tip at my tippin.me page. With that, I am out. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you tomorrow for your daily session.